What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be making a response, or at least touching on a video that Greg uploaded today called Let's Save Bodybuilding. Here's how. I'm going to give you my thoughts. I'm going to tell you whether or not I agree with Greg's stance and his proposition. I'm going to give you a little bit of my perspective as somebody who's a big fan of the sport, also competes in it as an amateur, and just touch on a few other things in regard to the sport because, as many of you may know, there's a lot of controversy surrounding it as of late. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Ethan. I appreciate you watching. I'm not going to drag this out. Let's just get right into this. So if you haven't watched Greg's video already, I'm going to have it linked down below if you're interested in checking it out. But to essentially summarize what it is he's pitching in his video, he's basically saying we should decrease the weight difference between an amateur and a pro. For example, if you weigh 180 as an amateur, you get your pro card, all of a sudden your weight class goes up 10. So now you have to put on a lot more muscle in order to be competitive. 10 pounds is quite a bit of muscle, so being that the weight classes have that much of a space, then you kind of have to push the envelope a little bit in order to get to the top of your weight class and have a more competitive edge. Because the way I view it, bodybuilding is kind of a game of inches, right? The smallest difference in conditioning, the smallest difference in vascularity, anything like that on stage can make the difference between first place and fourth place. You want every advantage that you can get. So guys are going to do whatever it takes to achieve first place. When you're competing at an Arnold Classic level or an Olympia level, you are a crazy competitor and you're not there just to say you did it. You want to get there and you want to get first place. These guys have killer warrior mentalities and they're not going to settle at any point. They're going to push and they're going to show their best possible package each and every time. And that's not very healthy. So to preface this, I agree with Greg. I think this is a good idea. I think it's healthier. I think it's safer. I think it would encourage better habits amongst the athletes. But there's a few areas that I kind of can't say I agree with, not in regards to health, but just the politics of the sport in general, the foundation of the sport in general, what goes into the sport, whether it be financial, whether it be viewership, anything like that. I think there's going to be direct correlations that might affect how prevalent the sport is, because bodybuilding isn't an extremely popular sport, right? It's not like the NFL, the NBA, it's not like soccer, anything like that. By the way, I don't have any notes, so I'm just going to freeball a little bit, so bear with me. So let's just say that the sport of bodybuilding hears Greg's proposition and chooses to adopt it. This is how bodybuilding functions from now on. If you go from amateur to pro, there's only going to be a 5-pound weight difference, and you're not going to have to push the envelope as hard. So here's where I think there might be a few issues, right? As a consumer of the sport, as somebody who just loves seeing these guys get on stage and displaying their best possible physiques, one of the biggest appeals that I think many people share, not everybody, but a large portion of the audience, is these guys are freaking mass monsters. They're not the average Joe that just goes to your local gym and bench presses 235 for 6 reps. These guys are absolute specimens. They are freaking genetic anomalies. So that's kind of what you get through the pay-per-view paywall for. You want to see these guys in their sharpest, largest, freakiest form. And obviously, I think Classic is dumbed down a little bit. I like the proportion, the aesthetic, the symmetry, the conditioning that comes with Classic physique. But when you look at something like Open or 212, these guys are massive. You know that they're not just taking a little bit of TRT. They're cycling pretty hard. And I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about steroids. I don't take steroids. I know a few people that do, but I haven't really done a lot of research, so I'm not here to tell you the scientific breakdown of steroids or if it's good or bad. I just know that long-term health problems are absolutely a risk. I would say a very prevalent risk in the sport of bodybuilding. So if this rule gets put into play, if these guys don't need to push the envelope as hard as they currently are, then they're definitely going to be healthier, but they're also not going to be as big, as freakish. And to me, that's one of the biggest attractions to the sport, is you want to look at these guys and not just see some guy who gets down to a small body fat percentage. Like, yeah, that's a great accomplishment, but people, I would say many, expect a freak show. I personally think it's unhealthy, and I don't want to say be gone with the sport. I love bodybuilding, but there's got to be a solution. So if that's the solution, I think that's going to have a direct correlation with a decrease in viewership, which is also going to lead to a decrease in revenue. If we were to implement Greg's proposition, the guys would be healthier, and I think that's number one. That is key. However, in terms of just viewership and the amount of people that tune into events like the Olympia, I don't think they would generate as much sales because the guys aren't going to look as big, as freaky, as whatever. Because I feel like that's one of one of the selling points for something like Olympia bodybuilding, because these guys are the best in the world. They're mass monsters. They coined the term. That just comes with the territory. I'm not saying it's good, but I think it's a part of the culture, honestly. You want to push yourself to your very limit in pursuit of being number one. I admire that warrior mentality. I think when I look at a bodybuilder, I don't just see, oh, a big muscular guy. I see what happens off camera, behind the curtains, where they're working out hours and hours a day. Every meal is geared towards strength, towards nutrients, towards growth. Everything is so calculated. They spend thousands and thousands of dollars on their bodies, and most of their day, each and every day, trying to get to a certain level. So yeah, you can just see bodybuilders and, oh yeah, they're all big, oh, they're all whatever. Nah, these guys dedicate their lives to it. So if they make decisions that could come at the expense of their health, I'm sure they're all aware of it. I just think it would lead to a decrease in viewership because the guys won't look as impressive. They'll still look insane, but just not as impressive. And because the guys won't look as impressive, I think it'll generate less sales. And I know that one of the big issues in bodybuilding right now is a lot of the guys feel that they're underpaid. More guys in classic need to be making money. Guys who are doing this for a living, who are bringing in these kind of audiences, I feel like they should make a little more. So if we were to chop a portion of that audience off because they aren't into the smaller, healthier physiques, unfortunately, I don't think they would make as much money. So therefore, the athletes who are competing also wouldn't make as much prize money. And I think that would decrease the incentive to push yourself harder in the sport. I think it would make it much more accessible for people who aren't exactly Olympia caliber. I think it's great to push the idea of health, but I also understand that this could have an effect on how much money these athletes actually make. And I'm not talking endorsements, but just prize money. I think Big Ramy made $400K. I think Chris Bumstead made $30K or something. He's 3-time Mr. Olympia, almost 1 million followers on YouTube, 2 million on Instagram. This guy is a walking bank account. And he made $30,000 at the Olympia. 3-peat. It's bullcrap. But decreasing the viewership, I feel like that would just cut into his potential earnings, unless one of the guys who funds the organization, who happens to be a millionaire, might pay him out of pocket. I think that would be pretty cool. So you got to ask yourself where you find that balance. I'm not saying it would be a night and day difference, like these guys would suddenly be half the size, but I'm more so saying they wouldn't look to their absolute potential, right? And I think that would turn off at least a portion of the current audience, and the audience isn't ginormous as it is. The thing is, a lot of guys have very gifted genetics. They can look amazing without any performance enhancements. Greg cites Anthony Mantello in his video, and I agree. Anthony should be a pro right now. He's got the work ethic, he's got the physique, he's got everything to back it up. But let's be honest, if you were to have 10 Anthony Mantellos on stage versus 10 Big Ramys or Chris Bumsteads, I would bet my life savings that 9 out of 10 would rather watch Ramy and Bumstead over Anthony Mantello. Anthony looks incredible, but he's not as freakish as the other two. I could be totally wrong though. Maybe people really want to see a safe change in bodybuilding, so viewership could increase as a result of Greg's proposition, and maybe that's what we need. But personally, I would guess that one of the biggest attractions to this sport is guys who are pushing themselves to the absolute limit, not pushing themselves to 85%. 85% for these guys would look unbelievable. Unbelievable. But that leaves a little bit to be desired, and I feel like that would equate to less interest in the sport. At the end of the day, I think safety is number one, but these guys also need to make livings, and most of the time, they're dedicating their entire lives to the Olympia grind, right? You're just seeing a lot of guys who are leaving us way before they should, crippling themselves for the remainder of their life, which I would bet they slashed many years off of in pursuit of being the champion. I mean, my favorite bodybuilder is Chris Bumstead. You guys see it in my videos. He's been my screensaver for the last year and a half or whatever. I would hate to wake up one day and check my phone and see that Chris passed away in his sleep as a result of performance enhancement drugs. It would suck. It would fucking suck, right? I don't want to see any of these guys. These are the guys that I watch every single time I work out because they fire me the hell up. These guys are monsters. They are animals. They work like I've never seen anyone work before. Absolute prodigies, right? They are absolute prodigies. But I'm not going to pretend what they're doing is healthy. But as somebody who's invested in them personally, you can't help but worry for their well-being, especially seeing all of these passings happening in the sport of bodybuilding, or just the quality of life these guys have to experience once they retire. It's hard to watch. Like, look at Ronnie Coleman. The guy can barely walk anymore because of what he went through and all the stuff he took to be the champ. It's like, yeah, you scaled the highest mountain for a little while, but once you come back down, what's the quality of life? Look, at the end of the day, these guys are going to do what they feel they need to do. If they want to be champions, they can pursue it as hard as they want, and they're going to do whatever it is that they choose to do. It's their bodies, it's their life, and I encourage that. But I also want to see them be safe. I want to see them live past 50 and 60. Bodybuilding is an admirable sport. Bodybuilding is something that I don't think many people are mentally capable of. I'm not even going to say physically. I think it's way more taxing mentally because of what you're just putting yourself through psychologically, what goes into it, where your head's at during all these endeavors. It's just, I think a huge reason as to why these athletes are pushing themselves as hard as they are is because the audience wants to see it. I'm going to go on a really random tangent for a second, but trust me, I'm going to drive my point home, okay? I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with a guy named Nikado Avocado. He's a YouTuber who does mukbangs for a living, right? Every single day he eats this ungodly amount of food. He's put on over 200 pounds. He's extremely unhealthy. His mental health is absolutely shot. But he's not going to stop doing that because people keep watching. He knows that when I do this, people tune in and I make money. The reason I mentioned Nikado Avocado in the space of bodybuilding is because I think the principles are more of the same. The more I do this, the more people are going to watch, the more successful I'm going to be, the more I'm going to profit. So if people are tuning in to watch these guys push the limit, they're going to keep pushing the limit. If people keep tuning in to watch Nikado Avocado eat himself to death, he's going to keep eating himself to death because that's what sells. I feel like in cases like this, we have a huge responsibility as an audience, right? What we watch is what they're going to keep selling because it's selling, right? So if we constantly buy pay-per-view, whatever, to watch these guys be mass monsters, they're going to keep trying to be mass monsters, right? I think that we need to take it into a better direction. I like Greg's proposition where these guys take healthier approaches, whether they're natural or unnatural, give more people an option to go a healthier route. But I think as consumers of the sport, if we change our demand, they will change what they supply. I feel Classic Physique isn't as dangerous as Men's Open because they're not pushing as hard, but the guys don't make nearly as much money. I think a lot more of the funding should probably go towards Classic because it's a healthier way of approaching the sport. And I think as of late, a lot more popularity has surrounded Classic, quite frankly. The guys in Open are making a lot more than the guys in Classic, way more. And to most of these people, because they're competing at an Olympia level, these are their lives. This is what they do for a living. It's eat, sleep, train, right? So I don't think many of them have day jobs. I could be wrong. But if the paychecks aren't that great, and then you look at Men's Open and the paychecks are just way bigger, you're going to push yourself harder because that's where the money is. If you were to allocate it towards a different division in bodybuilding, then I think a lot more guys are going to gravitate towards that division, therefore making the sport safer overall. There's just going to be more incentive to compete at that level if the reward is great enough, and that's what the consumer is actually seeking, you know? Like if we're all looking for mass monsters, everyone's going to be pushing the envelope, and that's going to make them unsafe. So I don't really understand the financial aspect. I don't know how they divvy up all the prize money amongst all the classes and divisions. If there was bigger prize pots for guys who are competing at safer levels, there would be more incentive to compete at the safer levels. And us as consumers, don't get me wrong, I love guys like Hadi. I love guys like Brandon Curry. I love Big Ramy. I love these guys. These are inspirations to me, seriously. Like, I watch these guys every time I work out, and it fires me the hell up. But I'm not going to pretend I don't worry about their safety. I think that would save a lot of lives. I think that would increase the quality of life for a lot of these competitors. I think that would be a safer approach. So, in conclusion, I agree with Greg. I like his approach. I don't know if it's the best possible approach. However, I think it's a step in the right direction. But as I mentioned, I think there might be a couple downsides to that in terms of demand for the Olympia or consumption of bodybuilding as a sport. But I guess time will tell. Let's see if they adopt that concept. Maybe another concept will come to fruition. But anyways, guys, so to clarify, I don't want the guys in Open to be less successful. I don't want anything like that. But to encourage better decisions, I think the priority should shift towards things like Classic Physique, or maybe just make some other decisions. But like I said, this is what Greg proposed. I like the idea of it. I would like to see them put it into play. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm curious as to what you guys have to say. Feel free to weigh in. I know the sport's under a lot of scrutiny right now. I want to see the best for all the competitors and the organization as a whole. I love bodybuilding. I want to see it live for another 100 years, but if it's this dangerous, if this many people are dying early or are being crippled as a result, what's that worth, right? But anyways, guys, that is it for this video. I appreciate you watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace.